Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to unravel a fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying legal journey. We're looking closely at the exact life cycle of seized property under Section 71 of the Excise Act. We're going to take some pretty dense legal text and transform it into a clear visual roadmap to show you exactly how everyday physical property gets caught right in the crosshairs of the law. To kick things off, I want you to picture a very real-world scenario. Let's say you lend your pickup truck to a buddy. Unbeknownst to you, he decides to stash a crate of illegal, untaxed liquor in the back. He gets pulled over. Obviously, he's in huge trouble. But what happens to your truck? Well, in the eyes of the law, your physical property is about to become the main character of a very stressful story. It faces a perilous journey, and getting it back is not as simple as just throwing your hands up and saying, "Hey, I didn't know." Okay, let's dive into this. To navigate this legal labyrinth, we're breaking things down into 4 chronological phases today. First, what triggers a seizure? Second, the path to confiscation. Third, protecting the innocent owner. And finally, the final fate of the asset. Let's start right at the beginning with Phase 1, what triggers a seizure. This explores the exact moment the government takes action against suspected property. Now, a crucial point to understand right off the bat, and people make this mistake all the time, is that there is a hard, distinct legal line between a seizure and confiscation. On the left, seizure is simply the act of the collector or an excise officer taking temporary custody of the property because they have reason to believe an offense has been committed. Think of it as an investigative hold. On the right, confiscation is the final legal decree where the government permanently strips you of your ownership. Basically, seizure is the start of the nightmare. Confiscation is the terrifying end. So, according to subsection 1 of the Act, what exactly can be seized? The short answer? Practically everything involved in the offense. Yes, obviously they seize the illegal intoxicants and the stills used to make them. But look at how wide this net is cast. They take the packages, the vessels, the rafts, the vehicles. They can literally seize the animals and carts. If a horse is pulling a cart full of contraband, that horse is legally liable to be seized by the authorities. No joke. Oh, but it gets even stricter. What if you have perfectly legal goods packed right alongside the illegal ones? Well, subsection 1, clause B, introduces something called mixed goods liability. If your lawfully manufactured or transported items are just sharing a receptacle, package, or vehicle with those illegal intoxicants, those totally innocent goods are also liable to seizure. They literally just get caught in the crossfire for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Moving on to Phase 2, the path to confiscation. Let's see how a temporary seizure formally escalates into a permanent loss. During this phase, a formal inquiry takes place led by a collector or an authorized officer. And what's absolutely incredible here is the sheer authority granted to this official under subsection 13. When they are making inquiries about confiscated property, the collector has the exact same powers as a civil court. They can receive evidence on affidavit. They can summon you, enforce your attendance, examine you under oath, and legally compel you to hand over documents. You aren't just dealing with some standard middle management administrator. You are dealing with someone wielding the full investigative might of a judge. Now, thankfully, the collector can't just snap their fingers and take your stuff. Subsection 4 dictates some strict procedural fairness. Before any actual confiscation order is made, 3 mandatory steps have to happen. Step 1, you've got to get a written notice detailing the exact grounds for the proposed confiscation. Step 2, you must be given a specific window of time to submit a written representation to defend yourself. And Step 3, you must be given a reasonable opportunity for a hearing. The law essentially mandates that you get your day in court, so to speak, before your asset is permanently taken. But don't pack your bags thinking you can just drive your truck home while waiting for that hearing. Subsection 7 outlines a really harsh reality: strict custody. Your property stays locked up until the matter is entirely resolved. And the law is incredibly clear here. The seized property cannot be released while confiscation proceedings are pending, even if the owner formally applies for it. Your property is entirely frozen unless you pay a compounding amount or a sum equal to the full prevailing market value of the asset. Which brings us to Phase 3, protecting the innocent owner. If your vehicle was seized because somebody else used it illegally, how do you fight back? The absolute golden ticket to saving your property lies right here in subsection 5. The law explicitly states that no order of confiscation shall be made if the owner proves that the vehicle was, and I quote, used without his knowledge or connivance, or the knowledge or connivance of his agent. This phrasing is everything. We all know what knowledge means, right? But what about that second word, connivance? Let's define it.
Connivance is the willingness to secretly allow or be involved in wrongdoing. It essentially means turning a blind eye. Claiming ignorance is not a valid excuse if you purposefully looked the other way while your friend loaded sketchy, unlabeled boxes into your truck. You have to prove you genuinely didn't know and that you weren't willfully ignoring the glaring red flags.
And here is where the legal hammer really drops. Who actually has to prove all of this? The burden of proof is entirely on you, the owner. You've got to prove to the collector that not only were you ignorant of the crime, but that you and your agents took all reasonable and necessary precautions against such illegal use. You have to show proactive prevention. If you just casually tossed your keys to a known smuggler without asking a single question, well, you didn't take reasonable precautions and you are going to lose your vehicle. All right, final chapter, Phase 4, the final fate. The hearings are over, the decisions have been made. What is the ultimate destination of the physical property?
Behind the scenes, there are these strict legal clocks constantly ticking. Under subsection 12, the collector has to submit a full report of the confiscation to the excise commissioner within just 24 hours. Under subsection 6, if you lose your case, you have exactly 30 days from the date of the order to file an appeal. And what if the offender just abandons the property and runs off? Well, under subsection 8, the collector has to wait exactly 1 month from the date of seizure before confiscating an abandoned asset. That gives any unknown owner time to come out of the woodwork and make a claim.
Now, there is one really practical exception to all this waiting around. What if the seized goods are rotting? Under subsection 9, if the property is subject to speedy and natural decay, imagine a cart full of fresh fruit that was hiding the contraband, the collector can direct it to be sold immediately, even before the proceedings are actually finished. The cash netted from that quick public sale simply replaces the physical fruit in the legal process. Pretty smart, right?
For everything else that survives the legal process and gets officially confiscated, it faces one of two fates. If the collector determines the goods cannot be preserved or just aren't fit for human consumption, like some highly toxic illicitly brewed alcohol, subsection 10 dictates they're recorded in writing and totally destroyed. But if we're talking about usable, valuable assets, like your pickup truck, subsection 11 kicks in. If it's expedient in the public interest, the collector can order that confiscated property to be sold off to the highest bidder in a public auction, or they can just dispose of it departmentally for government use. And that brings us to the end of the line for a seized asset under Section 71. It is a rigorous, unyielding system that's designed to be tough on contraband, but as you've seen, it's just as tough on the physical property itself. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If a friend borrowed your property tomorrow and committed a crime, and the authorities seized it, could you actually prove to a collector that you took all reasonable precautions? It's a massive legal burden, and as we learned today, the law is absolutely not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the details.